Hi, everyone, and welcome to this broadcast. Mark DeJesus here, bringing you insights for your healing and freedom journey. I'm all about mental, emotional, and relationship health and helping to equip you on that journey and what it looks like for your life and what you're working through. I am the author of the book, The OCD Healing Journey, getting to the heart of our obsessive and compulsive struggles. Today, what I want to get into is this question. Are you on fire for Jesus, or are you obsessive compulsive? I'm going to do two things. I'm going to address that question, and then I'm going to address an actual question that was sent in that's tied exactly to what I'm talking about. If this video is a blessing to your life, be sure to check out markdejesus.com for more insights, more information, more resources. Like and subscribe, and it'd be a real blessing to share this message with other people. So let's get right into this. For Christians, a passionate relationship with God through Jesus Christ, being on fire for God, all those kind of things are statements we say and believe and appreciate. We teach, it's emphasized. But what happens when obsessive compulsive gets into the mix? And I found numerous times in my life and my journey bumping into this. I've noticed it in my own life, in my own journey, and I've noticed it in people I've worked with, where there are concerning influences that invade their faith walk that can get things a bit dysfunctional. Let's just say that. So what I want to talk about, and I pray that if this encourages you, you'll get yourself a copy of the OCD Healing Journey, because I want to get to the heart of what you struggle with when it comes to religious OCD, scrupulosity, or any form of OCD really. But today I'm getting into how OCD affects your faith and affects this sense of being passionately on fire is how you think it comes across. But you may not realize there's obsessive compulsive things going on behind the scenes and how you come across. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a few things that mark that OCD is in the mix, in this kind of, I'm on fire for Jesus and I'm going all out for God and I'm passionate for Him, where it can be concerning and it can take someone off the rails. Because it'll keep them from seeing things with emotional sobriety, being able to discern things in their life, what influence, and they can often do a lot of relational damage too. I've seen some of these patterns in my own journey and had to come to terms with it. So let me get right into this. When someone has an obsessive, compulsive intensity about their faith, right? What I'm saying here is it's not bad being on fire for Jesus. That's not. Many times people go black and white with things I say. Well, if you're saying this, then you mean this. No, what I'm encouraging is believers to be grounded in their faith and their walk and their journey. But what you'll notice in this area of an obsessor's life is a sense of chronic religious disturbance. Their spiritual life is fueled by disturbance. They're disturbed within. They're disturbed in what they see in people and what's going on. They're just constantly disturbed, first of all. And number two, they are disturbed that you are not disturbed as they are. So they're very intense and they've got a lot of fire. Their statement of what they carry in their life is, I'm on fire for God. I need you to be more on fire for God. And I need you to be on fire for God like I am. And I need you to be more on fire for God because I need to be more on fire for God and you're not on fire for God and I need to be more on fire for God and so do you, right? This can create a lot of zealots where they have an intense amount of passion, but they lack grace, they lack love, they lack patience, kindness, they lack relational exchange, because it's very easy in our faith journey to get latched around convictions and perspectives, and we disconnect from love and grace. And it can be very easy because, like, oh, I figured something out. I figured something out in the Bible, and you don't have this. And and now we become intense yellers. So there's a disturbance they have. You feel it, like they're just always disturbed. You ever see many preachers? They just always look disturbed. I had to ask myself that one time. Why am I always preaching so angry? Why am I always preaching like I'm leading a WWE Monday Night Raw event where it's like, you got to have this certain intensity, And it caused me to take myself too seriously. And I had this religious perfectionism within me, and it didn't allow grace and love and compassion. And it wasn't until going through my own difficulties and hard times where I was brought to my knees, where I had to let a grounded work in my life take this passion for God, this fire for God, but ground it in love, where I'm now more relationally wired in how I relate to people versus like, you got to get people to this level, to this place, and you got it, right? So there's a disturbance. You can just feel it around them, right? Well, because there's a disturbance within that they haven't come to terms with, and they respond with this inward hostility to everything. Two is there's a constant relationship intensity. They lack grace for themselves, and they have an intense high standard on themselves, and they need other people to be that way too. So this relationship intensity causes them to be legalistic, where maybe they felt they needed to do a 20-day fast, and now everybody needs to do a fast like I did. Or they felt God told them to give something up, which that's a common thing that spins out OCDers. They think if they want something, God doesn't want it. They get very confused on that. And so maybe they do something there. They think everybody else needs to do that. So they run people over with their convictions. Relationships are not as important as just getting your convictions out and running people over with it. The third thing is that there's this angry edge that takes place. You know what I mean when I say that? There's like an irritation that they carry. It's very, very super serious. They don't know how to laugh at themselves a bit, not take themselves so seriously. It's hard to relax around them because they're intense, because there's an angry edge. And if you really dig down deep, because OCDers have a lot of self-hatred or self-anger. The pressure is inward. And I saw this modeled in a lot of preachers I watched, a lot of church leaders who portrayed very spiritual lives that is anger to them. And I found that manifesting in my own life, one, from what was modeled to me, two, from my own inner hostility. We give out to others the flame of inferno that we're having with ourselves. And when I learned to let God's love have an impact in my life and to see that in my own journey, it helped me to see others more compassionately, more graciously. It's not that I wasn't kind, but there was this intensity about me that kindness needed to have a greater work in, to saturate my heart with the compassion that God has over us, the patience that he has over us, the mercy that is new every morning. It's very, very humbling. But I had to deal with the anger I had towards myself, because how I dealt with myself is how I interacted with those around me. And same with those who are obsessive compulsive about their faith in a very intense kind of way. So they're religious perfectionists. They have this marker of spiritual passion, and it's a high standard. It's perfectionistic because it's like in the stratosphere. And they expect that of everyone else. And those that are leaders, they expect that of their people. So then people around you feel they have to match that if they want to be under your leadership. And they feel under this pressure. But the problem is that it's not relational, it's not gracious, because the fire of God happens relationally when we come into connection with who God is. That his love, but a passionate love, and but we try to force it. With religious perfectionism, we got to force it. We got to make this happen. So we often have to do things to try to manipulate people to getting into that place. And we're leaving a stamp on them of just right, but never enough. Many religious perfectionists have certain rules in how they relate to others. So they're constantly disqualifying people. And it's just never good enough, because their standards run people over. Now, this is another interesting observation I want to bring to your attention. They can often have an addict-like approach to faith. What do I mean by that? Well, some of them are actually addicts in the sense of they had a drug addiction or alcoholism or some other form of addiction or pornography or something like that, right? And they're trying to get free from that. And many addicts trade one addiction for another, and many addicts go into their Christian faith, and now they become addicted to Jesus. There's this intensity. I remember sometimes in my work with certain recovery programs, you'd see these guys that they were just like, they were yellers and everything was intense and all the way up here. And you need to be on fire, fire, fuego, fuego, everything's got to be on fire. And it's like they're encouraging this manic behavior. It got to be at this level because you got to be on fire. And why aren't you guys? Come on. And so in certain church circles, and it's not just Pentecostal or certain charismatic, you can see this even in some Baptist places, this sense of like, it's got to be up here and this all the time. And God is not yelling all the time. But we feel the need to do that because we're influenced by addiction. Addiction is looking for a high. Can't get it, so it keeps trying to return to get that high. And it can't quit it. So a workaholic can't quit work, can't close out the day. A drug addict, alcoholic can't stop the drink, can't stop the drug, can't stop those things at all. And so there becomes this need for it to live, right? But in this case, and I have a problem sometimes when Christians talk about, I'm addicted to Jesus. We're teaching this very high level kind of expectation that your relationship with God needs to be amazing. So this then leads into a lot of things. If you're married, you need to feel amazing love for your spouse all the time. In your walk with God, you need to feel this passion. And so you wake up, you go, oh no, I don't have this passion. Oh no, there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm not a Christian, right? And so we evaluate ourselves through an addict lens. And this is very problematic because our world is dictated a lot by addictions. The Bible talks about addictions when he uses the word lust, right? Or you're drawn away by it. We use lust as a gauge. And so because we're so used to that, seeking that kind of hit, we don't know how to relate to love because love isn't a high. Love grounds us. And we often don't know the difference. So many zealots who become, they're influenced by obsessive compulsive. They feel this disturbance, always disturbed, this irritation, this angry edge, and they have an addict-like approach that they go to. So they're doing this, and they may still have their addictions, and then when they approach God, they got to get way up here, and then they have a lot of drops down here because they're empty inside, and they're not dealing with the emptiness. So many still have their previous addiction and now Jesus addictions on top of it. Or they feel like, well, I'm free from that addiction and now they're in Jesus addiction. They traded one for another. And Jesus isn't an addiction. He's not an obsession. Do you know that? You know that God is not an obsession? God is not an addiction. He's very grounded, very loving, holy, amazing, eternal. We are awestruck with who he is. But a life in him is not this got to be up here all the time. And I see that promoted in certain church circles where it's got to be there. I see intercessors or prayer leaders, they're praying all this time and it's like this intensity. And it's like what we teach people is that when you have to pray, you got to pray with that intensity. And you know what happened as I started to go through renewal? I started to relax more. And when I pray, it was, oh God, we come into your presence and I just began to talk. Rather than trying to put something on. Because see, this addict mentality is a lot of pressure and it's a lot of performance because we got to get this high. And many of our gatherings are like this. And again, we can go, yeah, those charismatics. I've seen it in charismatics. I've seen it in Pentecostals. I've seen it in Baptists. I've seen it in a lot of conservative. We'd be maybe more on what you would think of like conservative expression is what I'm saying, right? It's like, well, the Pentecostals, they're super expressive. We're not as expressive, right? But we still have those same kind of certain pressures of intensity that can promote an addict-like relationship. The big one that is super concerning, though, is that they can be very argumentative. They share their opinions and convictions everywhere. They shove them into situations, right? But they have such a they're in such intensity. They're not good listeners to feedback. So when pastors, counselors, friends, loved ones say, "Hey, just your intensity is it's a lot," they become defensive. They often don't take in counsel to realize that they need to be grounded and mature some more, and to wrap their passion with graciousness and with love. So what my concern is I've seen many of them isolate themselves in their approach because they are an island to themselves. They don't take input from anyone. That, hey, it's concerning. So I've seen it tear apart marriages, tear apart families, tear apart relationships, because someone's defending their zealous pursuit and not realizing they're obsessive compulsive about how they approach the things of God. I had this in my life, and I put all kinds of stories, Bible stories, to what I was going through, but it was distorted. And thank goodness, there were moments where a friend or someone I respected paused and said, can I talk to you about that? And I can't say that I responded positively right away. But over time, I thought and realized the way that I'm going, because all obsessive compulsives have to realize the way that they are going right now, currently, is not producing fruit. It's producing erosion. It's not helping relationships. But we become very defensive at first. So one of the things that, and again, I'd encourage you to copy the OCD Healing Journey, but what's often needed is humble recognition, because I didn't realize that I needed to get more deeply rooted in love. My passion was not rooted in graciousness and kindness and patience. There was a lot of striving, religious performance, perfectionism, and that would just ooze out to everyone around me. But as I humbled myself and let myself go through some realization, some transformation, I realized God is in a journey of healing us and maturing us. I had to learn to mature. I had a zealousness, I had a passion, but that passion can also lead many people to be argumentative, defensive, know-it-alls, right? Very heady. We're always like debating, and we lose that relational grace, the seasoning of salt that we can be to not only preserve righteousness, but to enhance relationship. So I began to realize what the scriptures talk about the mark of a believer and the fruit of the Spirit. And I began to value the fruit of the Spirit now, because when you read the fruit of the Spirit, it's all relational. To value truth in love, so that I'd speak the truth in love. And I realized that, and I see other people that struggle with this. When I see this obsessive compulsive intensity about faith and about the Christian walk, and I see this, many times it creates a zealousness where we're not listening to feedback, and it takes something to humble us. So sometimes it happens with the younger generation. They blast off with fire, and it's like, what you guys in the other generation went through, you just didn't know any better. And I know, right? And that passion's going, but it's not grounded. It's not humble. It usually takes some stuff in life to hit where you go, And I've had round after round after round of things that I've gone through, and they humble you. They humble you to realize you don't have all the answers. And you're learning. And God, I humble myself. And so I pray that this video will do two things. One, help those who maybe are relating to someone who's in that but not listening. And two, maybe you're realizing that your zealousness gets off the rails. Now, I don't want to quench your fire. I don't want to quench that fire, but I want to ground it in love and grace. Because love is who God is. Grace is how he delivers it. And I'm grateful that God is so relational, but I didn't learn that. I learned a very angry God who's sick of me and doesn't want to be with me. Even though I accepted him, he's irritated with me. And so I carried that intensity in my life until I began to allow a healing to my heart in the renewal of the Father's love. and taking a journey that leads me to realizing his grace and leading me on what that does to my heart and to my relationships. It's transformed my life, but I had to be open to it. So with that said, what I want to do is I want to address a question that came in. And this is from, I believe this is from a dad. Yeah. That kind of illustrates everything that I just shared here about obsessive compulsive, on fire for Jesus kind of living. It basically lays out what I shared, but as I go through it, you'll see it through what I'm sharing here. How can you tell if someone is suffering from religious OCD versus being on fire for Jesus? Now, the dad says here, anxiety and depression run in my family. I've been treated for both successfully. Okay, so you're on your journey in that. So you're going to now talk about your son. We have an 18-year-old son who is a college freshman at a popular Christian university. Now, I don't know what university it is, but he's probably having a lot of experiences. Maybe these things are new to him, and it's bringing about a great passion and zealousness. His entire life, he seemed to exhibit signs of OCD. Okay, so this is where the mix happens. When someone has OCD issues and intense fire of God meets that, it can be a rough mix because it taps into all 7 distortions, including perfectionism at the top of the list. I have very open discussions about both my history and concerns that I saw some of the signs in him. So what I appreciate about this, Dad, is you as a father, you are aware of your struggle in your journey and you're open and sharing that with your son. I believe that is so the heart of God in these days, the heart of the Father to the heart of the sons. I believe this is the end days message that needs the restoration of what needs healing in our land. And after he was born again, he confessed to my wife and I that he'd been dealing with a pornography addiction. So this is where like the addict mentality is coming into play too. Because when I talk about in the OCD healing journey, the overlap that's often there in addicts and obsessors, that is there. There's a lot of similarities. And so he thought being baptized would remove that addiction. So it may be, and not saying getting baptized is a compulsion, but it could be the correlation he makes. Baptism's going to solve this. It probably doesn't. So then he's got to move to more things, because addiction and pornography addiction taps into a need, an excessive, unmet, empty need for love. So they don't know how to process love. And they have to learn what love is and learn to have healing in the heart. So as you as a father reflect back in your family history, and you can't do this in condemnation or guilt, reflect back, what are some aspects where my son didn't understand unconditional love? Was it very early on? Did we not see the signs? Were there some experiences or some trauma, some stuff that went on in his life where there's emptiness and pain, and he gets pulled into looking to pornography, sexual addiction for a sense of safety, love, and peace? So it's helpful to understand that. But he's on the road to becoming compulsive with this because he's thinking, okay, baptism is going to solve this. Through study of the word, mindfulness, he seemed to overcome it and developed a close relationship with Jesus Christ. Now, what I find is many times people with addictions, they can overcome for a season, for like a chapter. And then they feel like they went backwards because it kicks up again. Not necessarily. It just means they need to go deeper. Because oftentimes with addictions, we just want to stop the habit. We never do recovery work. Christians historically have dealt with addicts. Oh, you're not doing drugs. That's great. Praise God, you're delivered. And we didn't realize, no, the addict world needs healing. Addiction it's not just, oh, I do this addictive thing. No, there's a whole grid that fuels addictions. And just because the habit stops doesn't mean the root system has been addressed. And a big part of the root system is, how does one receive and give love? Are they able to do that effectively? and fruitfully in their life, in their journey. Not on stage, not in front of people, or in their Instagram live. I'm talking about in real life with real people, to being, and are they able to process pain effectively? What they've experienced, what they've gone through. So anyways, just throwing that in there. He is loving his university and being surrounded with like-minded Christian peers, which sounds great. He just came home for the Christmas holidays and seems almost obsessed with prayer, scripture reading, and quoting scripture. So while he was away, his OCD got tapped into in a heavy, heavy dose of religious OCD, scrupulosity, that kind of world. So that's what you're seeing manifesting. He has memorized many passages, is reading about fasting. Here we go. Fasting's a big one. Got to fast, keep fasting. For OCDers, fasting becomes a hook. Fasting, prayer, Bible reading. I don't read my Bible enough. I don't pray enough. I'm not on fire enough. I gotta fast. That's going to solve it. He has memorized many passages reading about fasting and stopped taking his asthma medication. He believes he was healed of this. Now, wherever that is, I would need more information, but there can be many that's like, forget it. I'm not using any medication for anything ever. I'm sure many of you have met someone like that, met people like that. Recently, he admonished my wife, daughter, and in part me for not doing enough, not having a true relationship with Jesus, all in his opinion. This is where what's going on in him is negatively affecting those around him. Because one, to kind of throw this out at your family and your parents is a bit disrespectful. I mean, there are times where maybe an adult son or daughter, brings a rebuke to the parents, but this is like religious perfectionism in action, So, it's not seasoned with grace. You can definitely see that. He was brought to tears with the thought. So that's really, he's in disturbance. That's the disturbance I was talking to you about. You say at the point, like, you guys just don't, I'm not trying to make fun. You guys just don't love Jesus enough like I do. Right? Let's pause for a second. Is that the fruit of the Spirit here? The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering. There's gentleness, meekness, self-control. There's who the Holy Spirit is has room to flow through us, right? Where I believe a mark of believers is, and I know many OCDers say, well, I don't have that. That means I'm not a Christian. Focus. Let's say focus. Hear the heart of what I'm saying. He says he feels burdened with the thought that the world is full of lukewarm Christians. I can't believe everyone out there. They're so lukewarm. He's taking himself too seriously, as though he has to carry this burdensome mantle of pain about the world. And we can have empathy. We can ache. We can grieve. I've talked to you guys about that, about what that looks like, and that where there are things to agree. But I have to always realize I'm not Jesus. I don't have to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. I'm taking myself too seriously, and I need to be patient and gracious. I think that it's important in every interaction. I ask myself, did I maintain kindness, graciousness, and patience? See, a lot of OCDers think more, did I say everything right? Did I win the argument? Did religious perfectionists and zealots, did I tell them, I want to encourage that our markers be, was I in all things kind? Was I in all things patient? And was I gracious? Was I humble in my approach? Because humility is so important. Humility doesn't mean you're being run over by people. It means you're reasonable. So what I see here in what you're writing is your son in his battle is defensive about how he approaches faith, and he's losing reasonability. In all my world of everyone I interact with, whether you're a believer, not a believer, whether you're on point with what I teach or not, whatever, are you reasonable? Are you able to be reasonable and understanding to share? So if we disagree, we can still talk and share and be reasonable, because the goal is to have a mutually fruitful interaction with one another in a respectful way, that there could be a love exchange. And if I need correction in my opinion, it'll happen in time. And if you need, right? Because God's patient, relational with us and how he approaches us. I see a loss of that. So that I share your concern with that. So you go further. Any discussion, explanation, or reassurance from us seemed to only upset him more. This discussion came after dinner on our daughter's birthday, which of course was very upsetting for her, as this was supposed to be a celebration and time with the family. Exactly. And he made it about himself. I know it sounded like it's spiritual and I'm unburdened and you guys aren't. And he made it about himself. And that's what obsessive compulsives do. Shh. I have to say that softly, right? I'm not condemning, but obsessive compulsives are often very selfish because they have this intense focus on themselves. So he made the birthday party about himself and what he was disturbed about. He couldn't even hold it. He had this obsession, and I gotta let it out, and I gotta tell you about Jesus, and I gotta tell you you're not on fire, because if I don't, I'm disobeying God, and it's making me cry. I'm so upset about it. And I've seen this, and I'm like, time out. This isn't healthy. We don't know what to do, this dad writes. We want our children to have a close relationship with Jesus. We feel, however, that this may be something more. Now, I don't know how old your daughter is, but your son's an adult now. And it sounds like you're doing work in your life. And one of the best things a parent can do, the best thing a parent can do, is humbly let God work in your life. That's the best thing. Because as you change, I believe that transformation has a trickle down in the generations. Now, we see our sins and struggles and bondage trickle down in the generations, right? But the work of God does too. So that's where we start. And it doesn't hurt to go, okay, I look back and I see some patterns. Now, no condemnation. We look, okay, I didn't see that. I didn't see this. Now I'm seeing it. Now, God's not being resentful to you and holding you in contempt of court. His mercy's new every morning. It's a new day. He's redemptive, and today's the day. But realize he's an adult, and create an invitation for reasonability. Hey, when you're here and we interact, I know you're passionate, but you run people over. Can you be reasonable in how much you push and go with that? And if he's reasonable and willing to, then you have something to work with. If not, it's like, okay, we can only do so much of this with you interacting like this. This is really difficult, right? We're trying to work with you. Here's some boundaries, because OCDers often need boundaries. It goes into a lot of different categories. Hey, we're not going to keep talking about that. I've had many people go, I got to put my foot down. No, we're not going to keep doing this, right? But your early childhood and teen years, your parenting is over in that stage. Now he's an adult, so now it's a new phase because you're a parent in a different way now. And a powerful posture is your own transformation and your prayer life. God, I pray that you would help him to understand your love as I'm learning your love. Help him to experience the grace that I'm learning in my life. And may you show him what he needs to navigate through this. And then you stay open. And because there are many, and I'm talking to you 18 to 25-year-olds, there are many in that time frame where they feel they know it all, they know better than you, and they're invincible. Been there, done that. I know I'm talking to. I see it all the time. There are many who don't go through that, but many who do. And a lot of patience is needed, because they'll have to come. Your son will have to come to a place where his heart gets humbled so he can recognize there's some disturbing distortions that are driving some of his stuff. And he needs some healing to his heart, and he needs to learn how to process love in his journey. Is this a help for you in your life? I pray that it is. If it is, get a copy of the OCD Healing Journey. I believe we can live mentally, emotionally, and relationally healthy while still being passionate for God and walking an effective journey. But get yourself a copy of this book, walk through it, and let it be a blessing to your life. If this video has been a blessing to your journey, would you consider a one-time donation or become a monthly supporter of the ministry work? It's an honor to be your brother from another mother. And as I say, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, I'll be back with more insights for your healing and freedom journey. But in the meantime, I'm out.